Welcome to our IIT Healthstore 10 Best PEMF Therapy Mats Buyer's Guide. So if you're looking for a PEMF therapy mat, this is the right video that you found that's really going to help you decide, because we've actually purchased all these mats and done some very in-depth testing in them to really tell you what they deliver. We will be releasing more detailed technical reviews for the techies, but in this video we're breaking it down really simple, showing you the basic differences between the different mats, what they're delivering, and what you may want for the different attributes in each mat. So the mats we've looked at are right here. As you can see, we've looked at the BioBalance, all the Healthyline mats, the IMRS mats. This one's the Omnium one, but effectively all the other different IMRS mats operate on the same principles. The Higher Dose, and also there's a bunch of other these infrared PEMF mats that we have tested, but not included in this guide here because a lot of them are quite the same. There's the QRS. This was also known as the Pure Wave mat. The Omi Beyond, the Bemer Pro, which is very similar to the new Bemer mat out there, the biomagnetic PEMF mat, and the MiraMate mats, along with the new Omni NeoSurround. So what are the key features that you need to look for in the mat, and what have we tested? Well, number one basically is the intensity. This is how strong or powerful the PEMF is. And a little bit stronger PEMF can work more quickly, but you don't want to get too intense. Most of the studies have shown that you do want to deal for at least full body application. You do want to be in a little bit of the lower lower intensity range, probably less than what you're getting delivered above the mat, 10 gauss. So there are a lot of now higher intensity PEMF mats out there, but if you really dive into the research, you will see that higher intensity PEMF, when we're talking 50 gauss plus, 100 gauss, 200 gauss, even more, this really needs to be for spot application only. And there's a lot of comparative studies showing out there that when you compare using a higher intensity to a lower intensity, the lower intensity will actually be more effective. The next thing is the PEMF field. As PEMF fields weaken, the further away you get away from them, you are not getting what the stated gauss is above the mats. We've tested at 3.5 inches, 5 inches, and 10.5 inches above the mat. Mapped it all out. We're just in this guide giving very basic examples. Is it average? Is it good? Is it very good? Or is it poor? And when you look at the peak intensity, say it's saying 20 gauss or 30 gauss there, in most cases, a good or a very good PEMF field, you're going to be getting about 10% of that, about 3.5 inches above the mat. Once you get a mat that has an excellent rating, well, you could be getting a little bit more, about 20% of its peak intensity. And if something has a poor rating, you're probably only getting about 5% of that peak intensity rating. So keep that in mind, that the intensity measurements we are providing are at the very surface of the mat, and these were measured using our FW Bell Gauss meter. This is a very expensive, very advanced Gauss meter that can measure the peak intensity of any pulse, including some other magnetic field sensors, which can also give us an accurate reading for the intensity of the Gauss as well. The next thing is the frequency, and the frequency really is how many pulses per second are there. You look at most of the PEMF therapy studies, these are usually done in the lower range of 1 to 30. Further, you can go to higher frequencies. We really recommend sticking in the 1 to 30 range because this also aligns with your brain waves and can have some brain entrainment effects. So if you're, before bed, you may want to use below 8 hertz because that gets you more in the delta theta state. If you want to relax and be at that Zen-like state, go with that Zen-like state, go with those alpha frequencies between 8 and 12 hertz. If you're right before the gym, or maybe you're going to be studying and you need to keep your brain active, that's when you want to probably go with the higher frequencies. But one mistake a lot of people do is they'll go and say, hey, I want to use the highest frequency because I'm getting more PEMF. But if you use a 30 frequency or above right before bed, this can overstimulate your beta and gamma brain waves, potentially even make you a little bit anxious and ruin your sleep. So it's really good to align in that 1 to 30 range and align it appropriately throughout the day. So in the pulse type here, we kind of break this down in a different way where people talk about sawtooth waves, square waves, sine waves, and every trapezoid waves and everything in between. When you really look at it, there's also a pulse width to it. And what you end up getting is you basically get two types of pulses. You get quick pulses, which is basically mostly square waves, which are these quick little blips that go up and down and have very short duration, but deliver the PEMF intensity in basically a split second. or slower pulses, which is typically sine waves and sometimes part of a sawtooth wave as well. And this gives you more overall magnetic field exposure. There's a higher duty cycle. The amount of time that the magnetic field is present when you're on your PEMF mat, that's what you're getting from the sine wave. So there are a lot of different benefits between each different one here. And what they basically are, not to get into every single one, but quick pulses may be a little bit better for issues like pain and bone regeneration. Most of the stuff for pain, though, has been done more on spot applicators, but if you do use it on a full body mat, you can get the benefits over time as well. And this is also what helps with the bone regeneration, such as if you have osteoporosis or you're going for some bone healing. Using a full body mat can definitely help with this, especially with the osteoporosis, for example. And then slower pulses, because these provide overall longer duty cycle and you're getting more magnetic field exposure. This can help with a wider variety of just general cellular stimulation. It's also increasing the blood flow. You may have heard, for example, mats like Bemer that have been around for a long time. They have been proven to improve the microcirculation. And a lot of mats like that with the longer, slower pulses, that's what those are used for. And those do have a lot of benefits because if you do improve your circulation and microcirculation in your body, everything is going to function better. The next thing is other therapies, and features. A lot of these mats, they do have multi-therapies in. There's some mats also that have electro-smog protection. So what basically is electro-smog? When you have electromagnetic fields, there is an electrical portion and the magnetic portion. And typically when people talk about bad EMFs, what happens is you have very little of the magnetic field, but you have a lot of the electrical field. And this can create a big imbalance in your body's voltage compared to the ground. And that is effectively what electro-smog is. So when you are using a PEMF mat, especially even a lot of the old ones, which were very good, and some of the newer ones out there, they will create a little bit of this electro-smog, but you're probably getting that much overpowered by the good beneficial frequencies or magnetic fields that are being delivered at a much higher intensity compared to one of the bad electronics that would normally have. But there are a few mats out there that actually do have electro-smog protection and will not only negate the electrical fields that are from the mat itself, but can actually reduce it from the surrounding ones. And then you have other therapies like infrared heat, red light therapy, etc. The next thing to look at is the warranty and the return period. Some of these mats, especially with the MLM ones, they have very, very short return periods, so you really don't get a good chance to test them out. And they can have high basic restocking fees. And also with the warranty, these are electronic devices. If you bang them around, move them, they're a little bit rough with them. You can potentially damage them. And as you know, with any electronics can wear out over time. We have a lot of these mats. A lot of them basically do last very long periods of time. But the fact is, electronic components just do wear out. So if you have a good warranty or a good trade-in policy, after you've been using your mat for 5-10 years, this provides a good way, for example, with the trade-in policy, to be able to trade it up to a newer model at a lower cost than completely buying a new mat. So what are here again the mats basically we looked at and tested, which I previously mentioned. We have our individual reviews. You can read on the Healthyline Jet Mat, the UTK Bio PEMF Mat, the Omni Beyond, the Omni NeoSurround. Omi and Omni, different companies, very similar name, don't get them confused. The MiraMate Big Magic. This one is not a full body mat though, but if you are looking something for more of a spot applicator, this does deliver that high intensity and just in the spot application, which is the best way it's designed to get effects from high intensity. There's the QRS mat, the Bemer Pro, the Swiss Bionics Omni 1, the BioBalance, and the Higher Dose. So if you do want to read the full reviews, you should go to our website, IITHealthstore.com, pop in the guides, and you can see our PEMF Therapy Mats Buyer's Guide, along with other guides for red light therapy products and more as we go on. So I'm not going to go into the full reviews, but I am going to go over the key points in our quick comparison table here. So you can see right now we have the Healthyline PEMF Jet Mat as our number one pick because they come in a variety of sizes. The Pro has 30 gauss and all the other ones have a 20 peak gauss. So above the mat, like I was saying before, you're probably going to get about 10% of that. So that does put that in that beneficial range that you are on average getting a few gauss delivered to you because the PEMF field is very good. It actually has a little bit higher frequency range than the 1 to 30 hertz. You can hit into the 0.5 and 0.25 as well. And these are all individual pulses, so they do align up with your brain for that brainwave entrainment and choosing during the right time of day. And what I really like about it is they have this hybrid pulse, which combines a slow pulse and a quick pulse. It's effectively a sine wave in a square wave envelope. So you don't have to pick that, oh, do I want a square wave? Do I have a sine wave? You're basically getting both of them exactly at the same time. You also have the infrared heat with the crystals, which is really nice, and I think a very synergistic therapy that goes with PEMF therapy, since, as we were saying before, the point of the sine wave is to improve blood circulation. Well, what can also improve blood circulation? Well, infrared heat can help do that as well. And one of the big things and big differentiators out there is it actually does have some of the most powerful electro-smog protection out there compared to virtually all the other mats, since not only is it neutralizing the own potential electrical fields through its shielding and grounding built-in layers and technology in the mat, it actually negates the electrosmog from your surrounding environment as well. So if you are in a high electrosmog environment already, when you're using the mat, you're reducing that down. It's basically almost like being on a grounding sheet, yet you're also getting PEMF at the same time. You do get the 90-day trial period, so you can really try it, for 90 days and actually get a chance to start some of the effects happening. One of the big things with PEMF is people sometimes expect effects immediately after a few days or a few weeks, but this is something that needs to be consistent and cumulative over the years. And the warranty, it's a five-year warranty, which is very nice. This is a limited one, so in the later years, 3, 4, and 5, there are some small deductibles you have to pay, but this is still very good in comparison. And you can see right now the prices for the smallest one, which is a 20 by 20. It's $399 US currently, and the Pro Mat with the 30 gauss, that's $1649. And if you do purchase from IIT Healthstore, you can get a 10% off coupon with the coupon code PMF10. Our next one here, which is another good contender, is UTK Bio PMF Mat. And this also actually has infrared in it as well, which is one of the reasons it did help creep up in that top spot, since this is a really nice therapy to get. And, if you've ever used these mats, it really helps relax the muscles so you're not tense and can actually get a better effect from that PMF. It also has a very good PMF distribution. While the overall PMF intensity is lower, you are going to get a little bit lower intensity delivered above the mat, but it's still very much in that beneficial range. The frequency is a little bit expanded to 1 to 99 hertz. I really don't think you need those higher frequencies, but it is nice to have it for people who maybe want to target one specific area on their body, put that area on it, and kind of really get that higher frequency. For example, if you are, doing it to a leg or a bone or trying to heal, some specific area. But it does only have the quick pulse, so these are basically a very quick square wave pulse, so you just get the benefits of the quick little blips there. And as we said, it has infrared heat. It does not have electrosmog protection, but because this is a pure DC square wave mat, well, a lot of other mats say they're DC, but you actually have to have a pure DC square wave one to actually not be creating the electrical field. So it's not creating an additional electrical fields, but it is not neutralizing any of the electrical fields around you. It does have a little bit of a shorter trial period at 30 days, and the warranty is 3 years, which is still pretty good. And if you do basically go to our site, you're going to see the current price right now as we're doing this video. It's on a really good smoking deal. So, check out the site, iithealthstore.com, and, we'll be able to give you the best deal for it. The next one, which we really like, is the Omni Beyond PEMF Mat. Now, before there was the original Omni Mat, and it was a much lower intensity, and because of that, it really wasn't quite as optimal, because the PMF field, I would say, is maybe like average and really wasn't delivering the best gauss above the mat. But now that they've upped the peak intensity, we tested this at 12 gauss. And because their PMF coils are a little bit smaller than average than some of these other mats, and we're a little bit more spaced out, it really only gets a good PMF field. So definitely not as good as the UTK or the Healthyline. But compared to their previous mat, it was a big improvement. They also have a 1 to 99 frequency range, and they do have a custom controller with a lot of pre-built programs, and you can program your own, which is pretty cool as well. But it does only have, again, the quick pulse type. So, a lot of people do want the quick pulses, because if you've heard stuff about slew rate, well, you get a high slew rate, you do need a quick pulse. But it doesn't have the other ones such as infrared heat, electrosmog, or electro-smog protection or additional therapies. It comes with, a pretty average trial period of 30 days, and you have that 3-year warranty, and it comes in at a moderate price point of, $1,590. The next one we have in fourth is the Omni NeoSurround. This one's a little bit different since it has a base unit you can use, unplug the mat, and just get general PMF around in the room at a much more subtle level. But on the mat itself, it does have a 3.8 gauss. Because it does have a good coil design, it still does actually have a pretty good PMF field. And this goes up to 100 hertz. It has that quick pulse, no additional therapies, a little bit better trial period than the last two mats of the Omni and the UTK one at 60 days, but a little bit shorter warranty at 2 years. And right now it's coming in, as I'm doing this video, though the prices may always change, at $1,348. So one of the big differences why you may want one mat over the other is, some people do not want infrared heat. So if you don't want infrared heat, maybe you aren't going to want to get the Healthyline or the UTK one. The one big downside that a lot of people find with the Healthyline mat is because it is made of the crystals, which does have its own benefit. It is very heavy. So it makes it a little bit heavy for the elderly to basically move around, and it is not as portable and easy to transport as some of the other mats. And that's why one of the reasons we have the UTK as number 2. Well, it isn't quite as good in all the PMF features. It still does have that infrared heat, and it is very, very light. So it is much more portable. So if you do want a mat that is more on the go and you want to be able to transport, that's really the mat for you. And then beyond that, again, if you don't want the infrared heat, the Omni Beyond, this is a very lightweight mat as well. It's relatively comparable in the PMF features, although a little bit more advanced in the UTK, but you don't have that, infrared heat, and it is a little bit more expensive. And then if you do want to be in that lower intensity range and more subtle, or use their base unit, the NeoSurround, apart from the mat, which is a good option that you can, for example, put in your office. You can use that, receive some passive benefits of PMF therapy without using on the mat. It's also a great option too. So those are basically our top 4 picks. You should go read our full review, see the pros and cons, and a little bit more details about them to really help decide which mat is going to work for you. And apart from that, I'm going to go into now basically the details of some of the other mats here. So basically, there's the MiraMate Big Magic PMF Mat. And this one basically has intensities of 80 or 150 gauss. And this one is more of just a pad. It's not a full body mat. So this really is actually following the science of using these higher intensities, because you can basically do the spot application. And it does only use the quick pulse, which, that's the purpose. For example, the pain relief is using it as spot application and the higher intensity. And they do have one of the best PMF fields out there, because the whole entire surface under the mat is basically covered with coils. So its drop-off rate is much slower than all the others. But the one downside, you do only have the one frequency of 7.83 hertz, and it doesn't provide any additional electro-smog protection. And the trial and warranty is a little bit on the lower side of only 30 days and 1 year. But it does come in sometimes, depending if they're on sale, it is when we're doing this video, at $536 or the normal price of $670. So if you are someone who, for example, wanted really to get the high intensity and a high slew, you've been sold on that, I would much recommend one of these over other mats out there, full body mats, because for those higher intensities, square waves and high slews, you don't actually want to apply it to your full body. You can get better results applying it as a spot application. And with the great PMF field here and that optimal intensity zone, this really is a good mat. So the QRS, the Quantron Resonance System, this is also a good mat. This was the one that was originally featured way back when on Dr. Oz. So this is one of these older ones that did kind of pioneer these PMF mats going forward in the future. Although its intensity is very low, it does use not exactly the same type of coil design, but the same philosophy as the MiraMate by virtually covering the whole center of it with not actually individual coils, but one big circular loop. So you get the whole center of the mat. There's this very big bulge of PMF intensity coming out. And while we have it rated as very good, it is probably even a little bit closer to excellent near the middle of it, as you are probably getting around 20% of that peak gauss. Though it is very low, there's only basically 3 modes. It doesn't use traditional frequencies, and because it is a very low frequency, it gives you a high amount of these very quick pulses in different modes with various frequencies, which if you we'll look in our review in the future of the details. We will show that and break it down. And it is actually the only other mat that does incorporate electro-smog protection. And this is one of the big pluses that they have been advertising, that, oh, compared to all the other mats out there, we have electro-smog protection. Now there is the Healthyline Jet Mat. That one also has electro-smog protection as well. But this was, back in the day, a very unique and beneficial thing. So, well, it didn't make our top mats because it is a little bit lower on the intensity. It's limited on the modes, and it is a little bit higher in the price, as you can see, at almost $3,500. And for the trial and warranty, this really does vary by who you buy it from. You kind of have to be careful out there, since I've heard that some of the sellers out there, they have older models and they're not really being warranted by the main company anymore, and they're trying to sell them as new models. So, trying to buy this one, you kind of really have to make sure you're buying from, real actual authorized dealer, even if they, claim they do, that are actually associated with the QRS company, if you're going to be wanting to get actually a trial period and a proper warranty from it. The next one is the Bemer. Overall, again, the Bemer actually is a very good low intensity mat, but as you can see, part of the problem is it's a really, really expensive mat, coming at almost $5,600. And, that's kind of a big downside, because if you are going to spend $5,600, just think how much other, health and wellness equipment you could get. When the other mats we're comparing above are all maybe around that $1,500 under range, you could be getting an additional red light therapy panel, which you can check out the red light therapy panels we have on our website, and a lot of other devices for the exact same price. If you want spot applicator PMFs, which we have as well, you can always check in our product category guides here, the different types of PMF and the different types of red light therapy. So let's go into that. It basically has a peak gauss of 1.5. Overall, we felt the PMF field was just good. Well, they do kind of have these larger coils. Because how they're spaced out, you do get very large drop-off areas because of the low intensity. But it still does provide some sufficient coverage, although what you're going to be getting above the surface of the mat on your body is certainly less than 1 gauss. And when it comes to their frequencies, there's basically 2 modes. And with the Bemer, you have to understand these aren't traditional individual pulses. They have their little Bemer signal, which is effectively a cascading sine wave. So they only have 2 modes. They have the 10 hertz, which is the night mode, and the 33 hertz, which is the daytime mode. And that's how many times those little Bemer pulses go off. And this is a slow pulse type because, as I said, it's a cascading sine wave. So you're not getting any of the quick pulse benefits, but you do get a very good slow pulse benefit from their sine wave there. And this is why, for example, studies have shown that the Bemer does help improve the microcirculation, because they are using this slower sine wave pulse. And that is one of the reasons you do probably want to include a slower sine wave pulse in your PMF mat, since the Bemer mat has been a trusted mat for decades now, does have studies proving it has worked, and a lot of people actually do love it. It's just that there are a lot more and better options out there at more affordable prices, because they are a little bit of a MLM company, which typically does increase the price. And with that also, it's like you have a little bit of a shorter trial. There's a 10% restocking fee, but they do have a 3-year warranty, which is not bad. And we've tested some of the older systems too, and I will say that actually the quality of their systems, is quite good. We even have an old Bemer 3000, and we've been finding, that still even, works today. So this is one of these mats that, even though it has only a 3-year warranty policy and no trade-in, the one thing I may have forgot to mention is that Healthyline has a trade-in policy as well, which you can read on our website for the details about that. But even though they don't have the trade-in policy and average warranty, typically I wouldn't expect to be getting a lot of problems with the Bemer. The next mat here is the Swiss Bionics Omnium 1. Now there's the IMRS 2000, there's the IMRS Prime, and whatever else they're coming out next, but effectively the PMF from all these mats is very, very, very similar. It's effectively the same 4 modes. They've kind of kept to this from every model out there. And the peak gauss they have is 1.6, but what you may have heard is that with the IMRS, it's more intense at the feet and it's less intense at the head. So this is the peak gauss at the feet, then you're at a little bit lower gauss in the middle and the lowest gauss at the head. And we only gave them a good average distribution for the PMF field, since as you do get a good PMF field right above the coils, because of the low intensity, like the Bemer, there is a significant drop off. So when you look at the folds of the mat, basically where those are, and it folds up, there's very, very little PMF field you're getting in those areas. And it does basically have 4 different frequency modes. In this review, I'm not getting into the exact details of the frequencies since those are a little bit off. We do actually have a comparison video on our YouTube channel here, which you can look at Healthyline versus the IMRS, where we do basically go into more details about the different frequency modes. But they have different modes. The exact frequencies they claim, wouldn't say are super accurate, but everyone basically has the 4 different modes. And their pulse type. They have, for their full body mat, they basically have a sawtooth. And this turns into kind of like this hybrid pulse where you have the sawtooth part of it is very much like a sine wave. So you're really getting that longer pulse duration benefit. And then the sawtooth where you have the quick drop off that kind of adds in that square wave benefit. So this actually is one thing I do like about the Swiss Bionics Omnium 1, since they're one of the other few mats, just like the Healthyline, that do kind of incorporate the slow pulse ideology along with the fast pulse of getting that hybrid both at the same time. They do not have electro-smog protection, and even though they have said, oh, we use DC, the problem is they use the DC, then they turn that back into different like AC currents, so you're still and then they create their sawtooth wave from there, which still does create a little bit of electro-smog. So this is pretty normal with a lot of the mats. I'm not saying it's harmful or bad, but they're definitely not mitigating it, and they are really a lot lower on the trial period of only 14 days, and they do come with a 3-year warranty. Although I will say that I have read a lot of comments on Facebook or other groups and seen out there that some models of the mats have been having some warranty problems, and it's been a little frustrating to deal with for some people. And I will personally say, from the previous mats we have some of the older models of the IMRS 2000 and Omnium 1 mat here as well. And there are a few problems with the power plug that do kind of degrade over time, and you don't always get the best connections. So unlike the Bemer, which I think we've had no problems with any of the older mats breaking, the IMRS ones, some older models like 10-year plus, they are not lasting. The electronics seem to be deteriorating a little bit over time. And for the Omnium 1, it still does come in at a pretty expensive point of $4,700. You may have heard of the IMRS Prime, which also has infrared heat, or some other ones, and those are thousands and thousands more. So it definitely comes in at the higher price point, and this is largely because they are, partially an MLM direct selling company, and a lot of that, price basically goes to the dealers. So that is one of the reasons basically it did not make our top pick. And if I were to basically select, because back in the day it was kind of QRS, Bemer, and Swiss Bionics were the different, top big dogs, the big dog mats out there. Those were the main 3. They were all competing against each other. I would actually probably be leaning towards the QRS and maybe the Bemer, because the QRS does come in at a much more attractive, basically, price point. But the Bemer, also it's a little bit higher intensity, and I do think that it does deliver some good PMF overall. So, but if I were to choose third, I would probably not get the Swiss Bionics mat personally myself. The next one we have is the BioBalance. This was one released by Dr. Pawluk, who promotes very high intensity mats, but at the same time, his mat actually came in at quite a low intensity from our testing. As he kind of, if you see the marketing for the BioBalance, it's been advertised as 5 gauss and 10 gauss. We measured it at about 6.6. But the problem is this is a low gauss, and it uses really, really small coils. Even though there's a lot of them, we got an extremely poor PMF field, and 3.5 inches above the mat, we're talking less than 5% intensity is basically being delivered. And also, this mat really isn't for frequencies. It has 6 different modes, and they really aren't PMF in one sense. It's effectively this BioBalance signal, which is made up of a few different continuous sine wave frequencies, and then it's modulated at different frequencies. So you don't have any off at any time for it. So this kind of just makes it a pure sine wave mat. So that's why we've classified it as slow pulse. It also doesn't have the electro-smog protection, and you have basically a 30-day basically trial period, and there is up to a 20% restocking fee, unfortunately, for it. We couldn't get any really details on the current warranty of how long that is. I've seen 1 year, 2 years, and it does come a little bit more expensive at $2,600. So, if you were looking at some of these other ones, I can't really say I would recommend this mat. It was supposed to be a competitor to, example, the QRS, Bemer, and Swiss Bionics. But if I were to, choose any four of these, I would again probably choose actually the QRS, the Bemer, or the Swiss Bionics over the BioBalance, in my opinion. The final one is the Higher Dose, and this is also kind of get grouped in with a bunch of all these other basically like imitation infrared PMF mats that have come out after the Healthyline mat made it so popular. A lot of them don't list their intensities, or they'll list an accurate intensity similar to their claim they're like 1,000 gauss, which is not really true for these. But the peak gauss we got for the Higher Dose mat is only 4.7, and they got a very poor PMF field score, because part of the problem is they only use 4 coils. They're positioned all in the center of the mat, and there is none at the foot of the mat. So you basically get no PMF therapy on your feet. The coils are at the lower intensity, so don't really spread out, and you just don't get a lot of intensity overall. There are basically 4 frequency modes for it. From what the guide said and what they produced, it was a little bit different. You should read our full review for all the details about it. And this is using a slower sine wave pulse. It didn't have any electro-smog protection, but it actually does create a lot of electro-smog itself. Out of all the mats we tested, it actually did create one of the larger electrical imbalances in the body when using it. So, is this going to really harm you? I would say, no for most people. We're around electronics all day, but, if you are electromagnetically sensitive, maybe this is a mat that you might react poorly to because of that. But the one thing is nice is they do have a very good trial period. So if you did happen to purchase one, if you're still within 120 days, you can always return it. The warranty is a little bit lower at 1 year, and they do have, a moderate price point of, $1,295. And like I said, we've tested a bunch of all these other infrared PMF mats, and there's just a variety of these different issues, because a lot of the companies, they really don't understand the technology. They don't have the electro-smog protection and various other things. So if you are wanting to go with one of the infrared PMF mats, again, you should look at our top ones, basically the Healthyline, or if you don't want one with the crystals, the PMF one. And, if you do want to learn more about all these mats, apart from what I've said, come down, read a review. We have more details even on here, pointing out a lot of the details and pros and cons about them, to kind of, really break down some more stuff about PMF. So I hope this guide has, basically helped you understand, the different PMF mats out there. What are the key features you want to look at when buying a PMF mat? Make sure to go to IIT Healthstore, read the full guide, really understand which mat is going to suit you, and make sure to subscribe to our channel and like the video, because not only do we cover PMF, but we cover red light therapy, grounding, alkaline water, and a bunch of other health and wellness therapies.